My parents made me cancel my wedding to marry someone richer, so I disappeared, married the same girl abroad, and sent the wedding photos in a gold frame. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and ever since I was a teenager, my parents treated me like an investment, not a son, not in the abusive, screaming at dinner kind of way. No, theirs was quiet, polished control. I was the golden boy. Straight A's, business school, varsity tennis, Ivy League internship. At family events, my mom would beam as she introduced me like a product pitch. "This is our future CEO," she'd say, her hand on my back, smiling too hard. My father would nod with this silent pride, like he'd spent years programming me just right. Behind closed doors, though, it was all charts, comparisons, and expectations. My choices weren't mine. Every girlfriend, every career move, every hobby, it had to serve the legacy. And God forbid I wasted potential. Then I met Maya. She worked at a local art gallery, wore paint-splattered jeans and smelled like jasmine oil and old books. She asked me questions no one ever did, like what scared me, what I wanted when no one was watching. She made me feel human, not valuable. Just real. I fell hard. When I brought her home, my parents were cordial, even warm. Too warm, like politicians kissing babies. But the comments started that night. "She seems sweet," my mom whispered later. "Just not very driven, don't you think?" My father asked if her family had any business background. I said her dad was a school librarian and her mom ran a little bakery. His smile tightened like a vice. So, not exactly legacy material. Still, I kept dating her for 2 years. Every laugh, every fight, every lazy Sunday, it all made me more sure. I bought the ring last spring, but I didn't tell them. Not a word. I knew what they'd do, what they'd say, so I hid it. Tucked deep in my sock drawer under old receipts and silence, and I waited for the right moment, if it would ever come. I proposed to Maya on a rainy Thursday evening in the middle of her favorite bookstore. No cameras, no crowd. Just us, the smell of old pages, and a trembling box in my hand. She blinked at the ring like she didn't trust it. Then she whispered, "Yes," and kissed me with tears on her cheeks. Not dramatic ones, just quiet, grateful ones. The kind that sink into your skin. For 3 days, we lived in that bubble, cooking together, planning color schemes, whispering about guest lists. I held off telling my parents as long as I could, but eventually I cracked. I sat them down in the kitchen, Dad scrolling his tablet, Mom sipping green tea, and I told them I proposed to Maya. She said yes. My mother's cup hit the table so hard it cracked. She didn't even notice. "You did what?" she whispered. Her face turned pale, then blotchy. My father didn't speak. He just looked at me like I'd spit in his drink. Then he said the words I'll never forget. "She's using you." I laughed. I actually laughed, until I realized he meant it. "She knows what you're worth," he said, "and she wants in. She's a gold digger, son." My mum started crying, loud, performative sobs, and asked if Maya had trapped me somehow. Pregnancy? Blackmail? Then came the bribes. A brand new Mercedes. Seed money for a tech startup I'd been dreaming about. A promise to put my name on a property deed if I just reconsidered. I told them no. That night my father threatened to cut me off. No trust fund, no inheritance, no help. He even used the word disown. I walked out before I said something I'd regret. Maya found me sitting in the car, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me. I told her everything. She didn't cry. She just took my hand and said, "Then we'll build our own damn legacy." And right then, I decided, hell or high water, we were getting married, with or without them. At first, we thought it was just bad luck. The first venue we booked, a small vineyard Maya loved, called to say they were suddenly overbooked. No apology, just gone. We shrugged it off and found another. But then the florist stopped replying to emails. The caterer asked us to confirm the new date we'd supposedly moved to. We hadn't. Then Maya's mom called in a panic. She'd gotten an anonymous email with blurry photos of me sitting in a cafe with another woman. "Check your man," the subject line read. The woman? My co-worker? We were prepping a pitch deck. Maya knew that. Still, she went quiet for the rest of the day. I caught her staring at the wall that night, lips pressed tight, like she was trying to swallow doubt. And I hated that. I hated that something was getting in between us, and I didn't know what. But I had a hunch, so I called my cousin Erin, my only ally on that side of the family, and asked her straight up, "Is someone messing with our wedding?" She hesitated for just a second, then sighed. "Your mum's been making calls," she whispered, pretending to be Maya, telling vendors the wedding's off. "That you cheated, that she's cancelling everything." I sat there, phone to my ear, stomach twisted like a wet towel. I couldn't even speak. She kept going. She told Aunt Mel that she'd take care of the girl quietly, like Maya's some stain to scrub out. I didn't tell Maya that night. I couldn't. Not yet, because she was already on the edge. Sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through spreadsheets with red-streaked eyes, muttering about deposits we couldn't get back. "I don't know if this is even worth it anymore," she whispered, not looking up. And I just stood there, frozen, because for the first time, I didn't know if I could protect her. It was 7 days before the wedding when my father showed up, unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there in a tailored blazer, holding a manila envelope like it was a weapon. No greeting, no smile. Just that cold, calculating look he wore whenever business was on the table. "Can we talk?" We sat in silence at the kitchen island. Maya had gone to her mum's for the night to decompress. She couldn't take another vendor cancellation or another "Are you sure?" from my relatives. My father slid the envelope toward me. "In there is the final draft of your inheritance plan. Your name's still on it. But if you go through with this wedding..." He didn't finish. Just leaned back, arms crossed. I opened it. Property deeds, accounts, trust allocations. Everything they'd spent years building and dangling like a carrot in front of me. "You marry her, and we rewrite it. You're out. No second chances. No buyback. You choose her, you choose poverty." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand. They weren't just cutting me off. They were erasing me, but I didn't argue. I didn't yell, I just shut down. That night, I stared at the wedding invitation, pinned to our fridge until my eyes blurred. Maya came home late, kissed my temple, and asked if I wanted tea. I said no. Then I said, "We need to talk." She didn't cry when I told her. She just nodded slowly like some part of her already knew that this war was never going to end in peace. The next day, I made the calls. Told guests the wedding was off. Told vendors to stop. Told Maya's father I was sorry, and just like that, it was over. My parents smiled over dinner that week, toasting to dodged bullets and future possibilities. My mum even said, "I knew you'd come to your senses." Maya never called again, and honestly, I didn't blame her. She thought I picked them because I did. 3 months after the cancelled wedding, my parents invited me to a private dinner at the club. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, a bottle of wine I couldn't taste. Across from me sat Layla. She was stunning in the curated way influencers are. Perfect brows, glossed lips, not a hair out of place. She shook my hand like she was closing escrow. No warmth, no spark, just cold professionalism dressed as charm. Layla's father owns Skyline Holdings, my dad beamed. 3 towers downtown. They're looking to expand. I nodded, chewing steak I couldn't swallow. My mother leaned in, practically glowing. "She's exactly the kind of partner we always imagined for you." Layla sipped her wine and offered a half smile. "I'm not much for romance," she said flatly. "But I'm great at negotiations." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I nodded, smiled, played the role. 2 weeks later, we were engaged. My parents threw a party that made the local paper. "Business royalty unite." The caption read, under a photo of us holding champagne flutes, her eyes blank, my smile cracked. I barely spoke to her in private. She never asked about my life, my interests, my past. She didn't care, and I was too numb to care back. But at night, I unraveled. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Maya. Her stupid puns, Her warm feet tangled in mine, the way she always smelled like lemon tea and oil paints. I missed her so much it physically hurt. I started drinking, quietly, not to get drunk, just to stop thinking. It didn't work. At the rehearsal dinner, Layla pulled me aside. "Relax," she said, checking her lipstick in her phone camera. "We don't have to actually like each other. We just need to look good on paper." That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't a marriage, it was a merger, and I was just a pawn in someone else's balance sheet. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to the sound of my own heartbeat, too loud, too fast, like it was trying to escape before I did. I stared at the ceiling in my old childhood room, dressed in designer sheets, surrounded by monogrammed towels and cold silence. My tux hung on the closet door. My shoes were polished. My soul felt hollow. I stood up. No breakfast, no note. Just took my passport, a backpack, and my watch. Left my phone on the dresser, dinging with messages I'd never read. And I vanished. 1 cab, 2 transfers, 1 plane. Gone. I didn't even have a plan. Just an old address and a photo burned into my memory. I wanted to find her. I had to find her. It took nearly 2 weeks. I stayed in cheap motels, ate whatever I could afford, asked old co-workers where she'd gone. Everyone gave me the same look, confusion, maybe pity. No one had her number. No one had seen her in months. Finally, I found her parents' house. Her father opened the door, then slammed it before I could speak. The second time I knocked, her mother came out. She cried for weeks, she said, eyes sharp. "You don't get to fix that now." Then the door clicked again. Maya. She looked thinner, tired, but still beautiful in that soft, quiet way. She didn't say a word, just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. I fell apart. I told her everything. The threats, the pressure, the lies. I told her I cracked, and that I was sorry, and that every second away from her felt like I was wearing someone else's skin. I cried, harder than I ever had in my life. She didn't touch me, didn't comfort me, just looked at me for a long, heavy silence, then finally said, "Do you still want to marry me?" I couldn't even speak. I just nodded slowly, stunned. Hope cracking through my chest like sunlight through a boarded window. We didn't tell anyone. No announcements, no registries, no invitations, just 2 people tired of asking for permission to be happy. We picked a sleepy little coastal town halfway across the world. No one knew us. No one cared about legacy, optics, or net worth. Just salt in the air and silence that didn't ask questions. Sold my car, pawned my watch, emptied every account I had access to. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for 2 plane tickets, a guest house, and a marriage license printed on recycled paper. Maya borrowed a dress from the woman who ran the bakery downstairs. It was cream-colored linen, a little loose in the shoulders, but she looked like magic in it. I wore rolled-up pants and a white button-down I'd worn to job interviews years ago. We got married at sunset, barefoot in the sand. No altar, no priest. Just a local officiant who barely spoke English, a few sunburned tourists who clapped politely, and a breeze that carried our vows out to sea. Maya tucked a single flower behind her ear. When she looked at me, really looked, I forgot every boardroom, every gala, every suffocating dinner with wine I didn't like. I remembered who I was. When I said I do, I meant it in every language. In every version of my life where I didn't choose her, I was broken. In this one, I was whole. After the ceremony, we sat in the sand and watched the tide roll in, fingers laced, shoes forgotten behind us. No speeches, no money, no parents, just love. Real, defiant, hard-earned love. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an asset. I felt human, and I didn't care who knew it, because for once, it was ours. Only ours, a few weeks after the wedding. I walked into a tiny market and bought the most expensive thing I could find, a gold-plated photo frame. It wasn't real gold. Of course, just heavy enough to feel important. The kind of thing my parents would never buy unless it matched the curtains. I slid our wedding photo inside. It was the shot right after we said "I do." Maya's head was tilted back mid-laugh, her eyes squinting in the sun. I was looking at her like she was the whole damn sky. We looked free. Unapologetically happy, I wrapped it carefully. No note, no return address, just the frame, sealed in brown paper, addressed to my parents' mansion in the hills. Then I mailed it and waited. Didn't take long. 2 days later, my cousin Erin messaged me. "What the hell did you send your mom?" I played dumb, she replied. She screamed when she opened it. Full meltdown. Dad had to take her phone away. "Your father tried calling you, but your number's disconnected," it was. I changed it before the wedding. Deleted my old email. Locked every door behind me. A week later, Erin called again. "The photo's still there," she said, "in their study, but it's turned around. Frame facing the wall." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. They couldn't throw it away because that would be admitting I'd beaten them. But they couldn't look at it either. It was too real, too honest, too uncontrolled. My revenge didn't need shouting. No confrontations. No screaming matches over brunch, just one quiet picture of the life they tried to erase, and proof that I lived it anyway, on my own terms, with the woman they told me I'd regret. The fallout was uglier than I expected. My father started telling people I'd been manipulated, that I'd been kidnapped by Maya and brainwashed into marrying her. A few colleagues from back home reached out in confusion. One even asked if I was safe. My mother, never one to be outdone, went full soap opera. She told relatives that Maya was using dark energy to control me. Witchcraft. Actual witchcraft. I half expected her to show up with holy water. Distant uncles blocked me. One aunt mailed back a Christmas card I'd sent years ago, scribbled with "traitor" in red ink across the envelope. Then came the real blow. I logged into my bank account one morning and couldn't access anything. The joint trust account my father managed, gone. The starter investment fund my mum set up in college, frozen. Everything I hadn't already withdrawn was locked away behind their lawyers. I stared at the error message on my phone like it was in another language. Maya didn't say anything when I told her. Just stood up, opened her jewelry box and pulled out a small envelope filled with cash. "We'll be okay," she said softly. "It's just money." We moved into a tiny one-bedroom above a mechanic shop. The windows rattled in the wind, and the walls were too thin to fight without the neighbors hearing. But we rarely fought. We shared groceries, split chores, made coffee on a single burner stove. And somehow, despite everything, I felt more grounded than I ever had in my parents' house. Every day was uncertain, but every moment was ours. No curated smiles. No forced brunches. No suits that didn't fit right. Just late-night walks, budget meals, and Maya humming while she painted in the corner of our living room. We were broke, hated, cut off. But for the first time in my life, I was free. One night, while digging through the back of our closet for an old jacket, I found a shoebox I hadn't seen in years. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some folded neatly, some crumpled, all written in my handwriting. Apologies I'd never sent. Pleas for forgiveness after arguments that weren't my fault. Long, desperate explanations of why I'd chosen Maya. Warnings begging them not to push me too far. Every page carried the same tone: fear. Fear of losing their love. Fear of losing their money. Fear of losing myself. I sat on the floor and read them until my throat closed. Each word felt like a ghost tugging at me, whispering reminders of who I used to be. A son terrified of disappointing his parents, willing to twist himself into something smaller just to fit their mold. Maya came into the room, found me surrounded by scraps of the past. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me and rested her head on my shoulder. I grabbed a lighter from the kitchen. We went out onto the tiny balcony, the city buzzing faintly below us, and one by one I set those letters on fire. The paper curled, blackened, then vanished into ash. The smoke rose into the night, carrying away the words I never needed to say. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was closure. With every page that burned, I felt lighter. By the last letter, I realized something I'd never admitted to myself. I wasn't that scared boy anymore. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their money. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone who couldn't see me for who I was. When the final ember died out, Maya took my hand and whispered, "Now it's just us." And for the first time, that was enough. Starting over was humbling. I took a job teaching economics at a small community college. No corner office, no glass-walled boardroom, just creaky desks, chalk dust, and students who reminded me why I loved learning in the first place. It paid just enough to keep the lights on and ramen in the cupboard, but it felt honest. Maya rented a tiny space above a laundromat and turned it into a design studio. No employees, just her, a second-hand desk, a paint-stained smock, and clients who trickled in slowly. Local cafes, a few boutiques, word-of-mouth referrals. We worked long hours, often side by side with our laptops open and takeout containers balanced on our knees. We'd fall asleep with the TV still on, limbs tangled like roots in soil we were finally calling our own. And through it all, we laughed. A lot, not because life was easy, but because the hard parts were finally ours to carry. Then one morning, Maya walked out of the bathroom with trembling hands and 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. Neither of us spoke for a second. Then I started crying. She joined me on the floor, both of us stunned and overwhelmed and so full of joy it felt like our hearts might burst. We didn't tell my parents, not out of vengeance, just because they didn't belong in this chapter. They weren't part of this foundation we were building, brick by imperfect brick. This wasn't a legacy passed down from money or bloodline. This was a new story, a new family. One forged in the fire they tried to burn us with. Every night we'd lay in bed, a belly slowly growing between us, and talk about names, about nursery colours, about the kind of parents we wanted to be. And I realized something simple but life-changing. I hadn't lost everything. I had built everything, and for once, love wasn't the price. I was the one being chosen. 3 years passed like wind through tall grass. Quiet, steady, and full of change. Maya's studio had a real sign now. I'd earned tenure. Our daughter, Lila, was 2 and already running the house like a tiny queen in mismatched socks. Every corner of our apartment was filled with fingerprints on windows, walls, and our hearts. One rainy afternoon, my cousin Erin showed up at my office. She hadn't visited in years. She looked older, tired, but warm. We caught up over coffee, careful with the topic of family. Then as she stood to leave, she said softly, "By the way, the frame. It's still there," I blinked. "What frame?" "The wedding photo. Your mom never threw it away. It's still in the study. Only now." She hesitated. "It's turned forward. I didn't know what to feel." They hadn't reached out, hadn't written, hadn't apologized, but they kept the frame. Like a wound they didn't know how to heal, or a secret they couldn't erase. They never spoke of me. But the image of me and Maya, barefoot in the sand, smiling with rings on our fingers, that stayed, and somehow that was enough. They wanted me to build a legacy on wealth, bloodlines, and appearances. They wanted me to inherit their empire and keep it polished for the world to admire. Instead, I built something quieter, softer, stronger. I built a life on love. That night, after Maya and Lila had fallen asleep on the couch, I sat at my desk with a warm cup of tea and looked at the photo in front of me. A different gold frame now, this one simple, dented at the corner, but just as sacred. Inside it, Maya laughing mid-blink, Lila on my shoulders, and me grinning like the luckiest man alive on a park bench at golden hour. That frame didn't prove wealth. It proved I'd chosen right. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all again.